guys, it's Holly and welcome back to my channel. I honestly haven't made a video in so long, but there's been many reasons behind it. I have been very sick, both mentally and physically, so I've just lots been going on. In the last month I've also been to 2 different countries. I just got back from Perth, Australia on Saturday, and I was in Tonga earlier as well, so I've been away quite a bit, and we just moved house. So if you guys have been following me for a long time, you know that we got renovations on our house and we've only just moved back in. However, the renovations are not yet finished. We just don't have anywhere else to live, so we just decided to move back in even though they're not completely finished. And if you're going to hear anything going on around, like any background noise, that is the people renovating our house, so I'm sorry about that, but there's not much I can do. I had all of these makeup tutorials planned for Halloween, but I just ended up not being able to film them, so I thought instead I would bring for you guys a scary story about a ghost that attacked me. This is not clickbait, this actually happened. This is my first ever supernatural experience, or experience with ghosts and things. I've always believed in ghosts, I've always been fascinated by them, I just have never experienced something personally about like ghosts and stuff for myself. This incident that happened was absolutely terrifying. I remember at the time I was like, what the fuck? It's strange, and this happened in one of Australia's most haunted places, and that is the Fremantle Prison, which is in Perth, Western Australia. This prison has been open since the late 1800s, and it was a prison that the British Army used, and they sent convicts over to Perth to work, and this is where they lived. And this prison only closed in the 90s, so it has been around for a very long time, and a lot of very cruel things have happened there. A lot of deaths have happened there, and I've got lots and lots of pictures, so I'll insert pictures about all the things I'm talking about. So what happened to me happened at the end of our tour. We did a guided tour, and I was there with my mum, my cousin Muzi, and her friend Cece, and it was a really cool experience. Like, there was quite a few little things that happened, but the main thing happened in the very last place we went to on the tour. So yeah, I'm just going to talk you through the tour, and then we'll get to the juicy stuff of me being attacked by a ghost. So when we first walked in, we went into like this little place where the prisoners were stripped and given their clothing, and all their belongings were taken off them and put in a locker, and it was kind of like where they were given like the breakdown of the rules of the prison and things like that. And then you walk through into Division 1. Division 1 is the first kind of divided area of cells, and there's 3 different levels and cells all around the edges, and there's like a big kind of atrium in the middle which has a suicide net over it, as you can see in these pictures. And so basically what prisoners used to do before the suicide net was there was that they would throw themselves off the building and kill themselves, or try to, which usually just ended up in them being extremely injured because of how horrible the prison was. And so anyways, there was multiple cells. I don't know how many cells there were, but in Division 1 that was the division for prisoners that were less of a danger to others, and also the younger prisoners. There were boys as young as 8 in this prison. So the first kind of weird experience I had was I was in one of the cells, and there the door was shut, there was no windows or anything. It was like there's like no way that any breeze could have gone in, and I was sitting there, and this extremely cold breeze, like ridiculously cold breeze, just like brushed past my arm, and it gave me shivers. I was literally like, what the hell? There's no way that a breeze could actually get into that room. There was no cracks in it, it's made of concrete, and like there was no open windows or doors or anything, and somehow this really cold ass breeze brushes past my shoulder. And they say that when a ghost walks past you, since they're dead, they're just like ice cold. And so that happened multiple times throughout this entire experience. So that was the first kind of like red light about there being ghosts there. So anyways, then we went into the kitchen and just saw kind of like where prisoners would work and things like that. Then we went out to an exercise yard, which was just basically like an open area that now has shade but didn't used to, and that's where prisoners would get sent out for most of the day, and there was really not much to do there, and they were like under the really hot Perth sunlight. So yeah, there was that. And then we went through to Division 2. There were 4 divisions. So Division 2 is where they kept more of the rowdy prisoners, but not like the extremely rowdy prisoners, if that makes sense. So that was pretty much the same as Division 1. Then we went into the church, which is one thing that they had there that was like where the prisoners had to go. Like, I'm pretty sure it was compulsory to go to church, and that was pretty cool, I guess. I mean, it just looked like a normal church, and yeah, there was a church. And then we went into Division 3, which is where Aboriginals were kept, and then I went into Division 4, which was where like the murderers and serial killers and rapists and all of the really bad prisoners were kept. like the ones that have done the unthinkable, or the ones that were very, very rowdy and, you know, like causing fights and things like that. So in Division 4 there was this one cell which was, I think it was like 54B or something like that, or 54, cell 54, which was the suicide cell, and that's for anyone that was suicidal or trying to hurt themselves, or that the officers thought they were at harm to themselves. They would get sent into this little room here, and they had like supervision all the time, and they would make sure they were like somewhat okay. And also in this division they had little display cells which you could go into, which showed all the different like sizes and layouts of all the cells over the whole over all the different like eras of the prison. So the first cell is absolutely tiny. It's about 1 by 2 meters, so it's like super tiny. This little cell has a little hammock, a little desk, and then a little bucket, which is a slot bucket where they pooped. And then you see it kind of like develop and get a little bit bigger because they end up breaking down a wall in between cells, so that 2 cells would turn into one big cell, and that's gave the prisoners more room and made it a little bit more comfortable for them. The furniture changed and things. They one thing that didn't change was the slot buckets. Even in the 90s, that was still what they were using, because they did go through a phase of using chemical toilets back in the 70s. However, they found that the prisoners were actually drinking the chemical water, which would get them drunk because it had alcohol substance in it, and it would get them drunk and make more rowdiness, and it also could make them very sick, because I mean, it's not proper drinking alcohol, it's literally toilet alcohol chemicals stuff. So that didn't last very long. I think it lasted about 6 years, but it just got really dangerous, so they decided to get rid of the chemical toilets and go back to slot buckets, which they still used when the prison closed in like 1991. I think it closed, so it didn't close very long ago. One thing I found kind of, I don't know why, it surprised me a lot, but then I was like, wait, these are prisoners, I mean, it shouldn't. But there was a SWAT sticker on one of the little peepholes of the door that one of the prisoners drew in Vivid, that obviously had tried to be removed, but it couldn't, and me and my friend Stacey saw that and we were like, oh, that's kind of dodge. And yeah, so then we got taken outside around to solitary confinement, and so solitary confinement is a place that the prisoners on death row are taken to. They're always put in cell 1, and that's where they stay the last few days before they get hung. It's also for the prisoners that keep acting up and have to be taken away from other prisoners, and so this is like the worst place you could possibly stay in the prison. There's like this little house, and it's got 2 rows of prison cells. One of them has a window and the other side doesn't, so there's like day ones and night cells that people would sleep in, and all they have in it is a slot bucket, and it's a tiny room made of concrete, and even one of the windows is still, like, the windows are barely there, and it gets super hot in them, and like I stood in there for like 2 seconds and I found it claustrophobic as fuck. Like, I found it so uncomfortable, so I don't know how people would live in those. And basically the rule of solitary confinement was that you had to stay in your cell for 23 hours a day. You were let out for 1 hour each day to have a shower, and then you were sent to the exercise yard, which is literally right outside, and they have all these numbers lined up along the walls, and the officers would literally, their job was to just exhaust the prisoners and completely tire them out, because the more tired they are, the less likely they're going to cause any ruckus and stuff. So they would like pick numbers, and the prisoners have to run like in between all the numbers until they're literally like nearly fainting, and then they'd go back into their cells and stay there for the rest of the day. One thing I found quite interesting though is that they didn't have the number 6 or 16, so you'd see like the numbers, those numbers are always missing on the lines of numbers. And that's because back when the prison was built, there was lots of superstitions around the numbers 6 and 16, and it would make some of the prisoners uncomfortable because 6 looks like a noose and 16 looks like the noose and the hangman, and that was just a superstition that made people uncomfortable, so they never had any of those numbers. Something else that was quite disturbing was a lashing post. I can't remember the actual name for it, but that's kind of the same thing, I guess. And that was behind the solitary confinement building, and this was where prisoners acted up were sentenced to lashes, and you can get up to 100 lashes with a 9-tail whip, which is basically a whip that breaks into 9 different whips, so it's like this massive, it's about this big, and they'd use that to whip the prisoners' backs. So they'd tie them to this 3 like TP looking post by their hands and ankles, and then the whipping guy was called in especially to whip these prisoners. And what they would do is, if you were sentenced to 100 whips, to say, just say you were sentenced to 100 whips, you could only really get to about 25 in one sitting, because the bones on your back would become visible, and there's always a doctor there to make sure that like it doesn't go too far, because they want to hurt the prisoners as like physical punishment, but they don't want to kill them, and whipping could easily kill someone if it hits a vein or something. So what they would do is they would whip, sometimes depending on how bad the prisoner acted up, the whipping guy would like put pieces of glass and metal through the whip to make it even more painful. And one of these whips is incredibly painful. One strike would cause you so much agony, and these guys were getting multiple at a time. So around the mark about 25 whips, it would be cutting right into their skin and into their bone, and you'd better see their bone, and there's always like a massive amount of witnesses of the people that are about to get whipped next and things like that. And for me, the worst part of all of this is, so say you were sentenced to 100 whips but the doctor stopped you at 25 because that's just when it gets quite dangerous and they don't want to kill you. Then they untie you and they roll you in salt to keep out infection and to like clean out the wound, I guess. But imagine having a cut, like your whole back cut up so deeply that your bone is showing, and then being rolled in salt. Like, getting salt anywhere in any cuts is so painful, so getting it all over your back would honestly have been like insane. Like, I can't even imagine that. That was just gross. And then you'd go to the hospital and you'd recover, and as soon as you got the all clear and you're allowed to go back to the prison, since you only got 25 of those 100 whippings, you would go straight back to the thrashing post, get whipped again, get rolled in salt, get taken back to the hospital. As soon as you're released, you'll do it again until all the 100 whips had been done. So these prisoners were treated brutally, and there is still dried blood on the thrashing post, and apparently blood just went everywhere when this happened. And yeah, it's kind of gross. It's actually really disgusting. Okay, and now we're getting into the story where I was attacked by a ghost. So the last place we went to was the Gallows. And if you don't know, the Gallows is a room in which they hang people. So I think 40 people were hung in this prison, 1 female and all the rest male. The last person that got hung was hung in the 80s, I'm pretty sure, and he was a serial killer and rapist. Oh man. We're in the Gallows. There's kind of like 2 different witnessing like viewing platforms. There's one at the top and one down the bottom. And as our guide was like, I'm getting like goosebumps like talking about this, but as our guide was talking about like everyone that had been hung there and like what sort of crimes you had to commit to be put on death row and things like that, I was like really listening to him and things like that, and I was like, just so you know, I was completely by myself. I wasn't anywhere near my family or my friends. Like, I was just by myself, and there was no one around me, no one that could have like just touched me, like no one was in distance of touching me. Like, I was fully by myself. And as the guide was talking about how they would break the necks and how like they had to like work out the logistics of like how long the noose had to be and like how far the fall had to be and like all of that sort of shit, I kid you not, I suddenly felt on the left side of my neck something like karate chopped me, and then just like put like a very thin like line of just like intense ass pressure on my neck. And like, it's nothing that my muscles could have like spasmed into doing themselves, and it didn't feel like a hand. It was rough as hell. Like, it actually like hurt and left a red mark on my neck. I didn't get a photo of it, unfortunately, because that would have been cool if I did get a photo of it, but I was so freaked out that I was like kind of like not even talking. I kind of just like lost my breath, and I was like, and then I like reached up to feel it and it wouldn't go away. Like, even as I was feeling it, like the whole sensation wouldn't go away. Literally felt like someone had grabbed a rope and just like pressed it against the side of my neck to freak me out. And I ended up talking to the guide afterwards to ask about like, because this is one of the most haunted places and so many ghost reports have been reported here. So I was asking him about like what happened, like what other experiences people have had with ghosts and things, and he says that the younger girls that come here on tours are the most vulnerable to things like that happening, because all these men were stuck here for so many years and never saw any girls, that they kind of like to jump out and scare them or like pull pranks on them and try and freak them out a little bit and play with them. And so most of the reportings from ghost activity are actually made by females. And so yeah, that happened. And like, I kept trying to like try and convince myself, oh no, you just imagined it, oh no, that didn't happen. I mean, like, even though I've always believed in ghosts, I was like, nah, that couldn't have happened. I mean, like, that is so dodgy. But it did. It actually happened. And yeah. and like being in the Gallows was scary enough. I did not need that. I did not need some fucking ghost to come up behind me and grab my neck. Like, that just put me over the edge, man. Like, I did not need that. I was scared enough already. Like, nah. In all honesty, I think I handled the whole ordeal pretty well. I mean, I was pretty excited to be there. I've always wanted to go to somewhere haunted that had like actually had people killed there and stuff like that. So I found it like a really awesome experience. Ow! So if you guys ever find yourself in Perth, Western Australia, I would highly recommend going to the Fremantle Prison. If any of you guys have been to the Fremantle Prison in Perth and you have any of your own stories about ghosts or just your own experience, I would love to hear about it if you guys want to leave that down in the comments below. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. That was my story of being attacked by a ghost. I really wanted to do this story because it's Halloween today and I wanted to post something for Halloween because I missed out on doing all of the makeup tutorials I had planned. But yeah, now that I moved back into my house and we have good Wi-Fi and I'm doing a lot better health-wise, I'm really keen to start making more videos again. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and hit the big red subscribe button down below. I post videos once. I used to post videos twice a week. I think I'm going to go back to once a week for now, just because I'm still trying to get my life together. And when I can, I'll post 2 a week. I hope you guys liked this little story time. I hope it didn't scare you too much. Have an amazing Halloween. I love Halloween so much. I'm literally not doing anything for it, but I love it, so it's fine. I'll probably end up being dressed as a giant bottle of whiskey and just watch Hocus Pocus in my bed. That actually sounds like a real fun idea. I might actually do that for Halloween tonight. Yeah, I hope your Halloween is spooky and is spooktacular. See what I did there? I am so lame, oh my god. Smile, be safe, and stay beautiful, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Adios.